oh, you've become seriously ill with lead poisoning or tuberculosis or AIDS. Just go get some dry air. This is Business Blaze. I am your host, Simon. This is a script written by Danny, Thomas Midgley, the most dangerous inventor in history. This one is, I think it was a suggestion from me. This guy I've made a couple of videos on in the past. He basically made a whole bunch of stuff that went horribly, horribly wrong. So let's dive into it. Some of the greatest mistakes in life started out with the most noble of intentions. Years ago, a good friend of mine once came to my house to install a new shower for me. I love it when we get these personal anecdotes from Danny. I'm generally clueless when it comes to this kind of stuff. Me too, Danny. But my good mate, and I'm going to call him Graham, because that's the dude's name, reckons that he had the skills and the experience to figure out how to get my new shower up and running. I'm gonna bet that Graham doesn't. Several frustrating hours later, I was wading through a flooded bathroom, having discovered that Graham and someone managed to sabotage the boiler and butcher the immersion heating. Why is immersion heat? I know way less about this than Danny, because I'm like, whoa, what's an immersion heater? Fully immersive heating experience. I was without hot water or heating for days, and never did get that shower working properly. When I was a kid, I got in a bunch of trouble because my parents went on holiday, and we'd recently moved into a new house and had this really old bathroom, and the emergency overflow for the bath was so clogged up with limescale that it did nothing. And I ran a bath, completely forgot about it. The bathroom was on the second floor. It completely flooded the bathroom and the room downstairs. That was not a good time. My parents were not very pleased with that. But it's hard to be angry with someone when they were just trying to do you a friendly favor. I mean, yes, it crossed my mind that Graham shouldn't have claimed that he can install a new shower when he could barely tell a hot tap from a cold tap. But his heart was in the right place. He was just trying to help. I'd be like, Graham, get the away from my bathroom, Graham. The same might be said of American chemist and engineer Thomas Midgley Jr. Or could it? Oh, like, is his heart in the right place? I thought it was. I don't know, let's find out. In his day, Thomas, and I'm going to pretend to call him Thomas for the rest of the script and then change my mind to continually refer to him as Midgley just to annoy Simon. Yeah, we brought up in a previous video. We did one about Jeff Bezos, and Danny was like, I'm going to call him Jeff throughout this entire thing, and proceeded to call him Bezos for every single occasion. Thanks, Danny. He was a celebrated, award-winning genius who developed two of the biggest game-changing discoveries of the 20th century. Nearly 70 years after his death in 1944, Midgley is now regarded as the man who contributed more damage to the world than any other human being who has ever lived. I feel like that might be an overstatement. Well, is it an overstatement? You can judge for yourselves, but I feel like, are we elevating Midgley to, like, you know, Hitler, Stalin, good old Tommy Midgley? I feel like if you know, make the names casual, it makes them sound less bad. Like, who else could there be? You know, like Joey Stalin. A neighbor of mine, his name was Adolf, and I only met the guy once in the hallway. I was like, I know you were definitely born before the late 1930s. To describe his legacy in a very toxic nutshell, Thomas Midgley Jr. was the man behind the introduction of leaded gasoline, or leaded petrol if you live on Danny and my side of the Atlantic Ocean. And then, for an encore, he also went on to invent CFCs, which also damaged the planet just a few years later. I remember being, I mean, I definitely didn't know about CFC. I don't think I ever had anything that contained CFCs. But I feel like when I was younger, like deodorant cans would say CFC free on them. Obviously nowadays everyone's like, yeah, of course. We don't hate the environment anymore, Simon. Well, we kind of do. But was it entirely accidental that he almost destroyed the world? Or did he have at least some insight into the horrors that he was unleashing? And what prompted him to publicly inhale and douse himself in his own poisons at the drop of a hat? Well, maybe he didn't think they were poisonous. Born in 1889 and raised in a happy home in Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania, Tiny Thomas first acquired a taste for engineering as a child when he used to mess about with machinery in the workshop of his dad, who was a traditional American inventor and local handyman. There was little indication at this stage that young Thomas would grow up to inflict more crimes against humanity than any other person in history. Again, are we really elevating him to like the levels of Stalin, Mao, Trump? Gaining a degree in mechanical engineering from Cornell University in 1911, Thomas picked up a job at General Motors in 1916 and worked under the leadership of Charles Kettering. Midgley soon rolled up his sleeves and got busy destroying the world. One of his early projects involved an attempt to solve a very noisy problem with early 20th century automobiles. Engine rattling or engine knocking was a side effect of the way fuel burned unevenly in an engine's cylinders. Quite apart from the dreadful racket it made, it could also cause serious damage to the engine's pistons and cylinder walls. Yeah, I remember in the video that I made about this, it was years ago, this was a real problem. Like, engines would be ruined because of this knocking problem, so he went to fixing it. Midgley discovered that adding tetraethyl lead to the gasoline not only solved the problem, it also improved engine in performance and speed. And I remember, Danny hasn't mentioned it here, but again, from that video, I can't even remember which channel it was on, but it was ages ago. He was adding, he was doing the like old school way of inventing things. Sort of like, yeah, let's just throw loads of random shit in there and see what happens.
I need fuel.
Throw a banana in. Does it solve the problem? No, it doesn't. Throw something else in. He was just adding all sorts of random shit to like petrol to see if it would fix this problem. Eventually he added tetraethyl lead and bingo! By 1923, Midgley and Kettering had secured the patent for their new lead-based formula, which they named ethyl, and soon afterwards, leaded gasoline became standard for the next 60 years. A friend of mine had a car that was so old, it was like a classic car, you had to add the lead back into the unleaded petrol. Healthy. Midgley even picked up the prestigious Nichols Medal in 1923 for his work, just one of several major awards he would collect over the course of his calamitous career. The small problem, of course, yes, here it is that lead is poisonous to humans. Exposure to lead causes damage to our nervous system, our IQ levels, our kidneys, and a stack of other long-term health problems. I think the Freakonomics guy had a look at this, or like he was talking about a study that looked at this, showing how crime, or maybe this was related to abortion, but I feel like crime went down after lead was removed from gasoline because people were less dumb. So less into crime. Have we got to the stage in society where we can't make fun of dumb people? I feel like gradually that group is getting really small. Like, yeah, you can't make fun of these people, those people, these people. Okay, I just won't make fun. Let's just Midgley discovered the tetraethyl lead. It's particularly harmful to children as they're more likely to ingest it and it's more likely to pass into their bloodstreams. Why are they more likely to ingest it? Children don't spend more time around cars. I guess they could be eating more leaded paint, but we can't be blaming Midgley for everything. Midgley's award-winning discovery led to 6 decades of poisonous fumes getting belched out of millions of cars all around the world before leaded gasoline was eventually phased out and banned in most countries during the 1990s. But was Midgley really the accidental villain in this story, as many people seem to believe? In this case, very probably not. The poisonous effects of lead had been known about for thousands of years. The Romans used lead in their water pipes, and it was noted at the time that Roman lead miners often ended up dizzy, blind, mad, stupid, or dead. It's like, could have led with dead. So it's interesting to note that Midgley and Kettering were initially both very keen to keep the word leaded or lead out of their marketing and packaging for ethyl. It was like, what's in ethyl? Definitely not lead. Definitely not that poisonous stuff we've known about for thousands of years. It's not that we're then aerosolizing in cars and spreading into the atmosphere. Not lead. It's ethyl. I mentioned like Mad Men, Don Draper. I've prepared this marketing campaign for you. What we're not calling it is lead. When General Motors teamed up with Standard Oil to form the Ethyl Corporation, the new company experienced its own problems with the effects of lead. 5 of the factory workers died? I don't remember that from reading about this before. 35 were taken seriously ill, suffering from tremors and wild hallucinations. There were only 49 workers in the factory anyway, so the company clearly had a bit of a problem with sickness absence. Wait, so basically what was that? 40 out of 49 were either dead or seriously ill. Can you imagine the guys at the union? Yeah, we think the lead's poisoning us. And the manager of the factory, it's not the lead! It's definitely the lead. Thomas Midgley himself suffered from lead poisoning in 1929. I'm not sure if I should say it, but good, during his initial experiments with ethyl, and took a long vacation to Hawaii to breathe some fresh air for a while. I feel like this was a medical cure in the past, where it was like, oh, you've become seriously ill with lead poisoning, or tuberculosis, or AIDS. Just go get some dry air. Despite this, he organized a bizarre press conference in 1924 in which he poured ethyl all over his hands and inhaled a bottle of it for 60 seconds in a bid to prove that the stuff was harmless. Dude, obviously it wasn't. Also, can you imagine, look at the length of this video. 60 seconds is a really long time. Can you imagine him just breathing the bottle of this stuff in for 60 seconds during a press conference? Just imagine that for 60 seconds. I'm not going to do it because it wouldn't be funny and I want my viewer retention to be good on this video. But can you imagine just that going on and the press would be like, Tommy, can we ask some questions? Shut the f*** up. And then he has some wild-ass hallucinations. Definitely not the lead. Shortly afterwards, he contracted lead poisoning again. What a surprise. But perhaps the biggest giveaway that Midgley wasn't entirely innocent is the fact that ethyl didn't really have to be invented at all. The General Motors team had always been aware that adding ethanol to gasoline produced a similar effect to lead, but the problem was that ethanol is produced by nature, so it couldn't be patented. Oh, so I assume that there was it was some sort of special kind of lead. Can you just make some special kind of alcohol? In other words, they went with their own lead-based formula, bingo, because it was more likely to make a stack of money for the company, even if it was at great cost to 3 generations of mankind. Awesome job, Tommy. Also, I really feel like discovering that ethanol did it. He was probably just hanging out in the lab getting drunk, and he was like, let's just throw some of that in there with those bananas and see what happens. Worked, man! But Midgley the Merciless wasn't quite finished yet with planet Earth. A few years later, the Frigidaire division, it's spelt like this, Frigidaire, but I like how it's Frigidaire because it makes refrigerators. It's pretty clever. A division of General Motors enlisted the talents of Midgley to help develop a solution to another problem. The early this has got to be the CFC thing. The early refrigerators used coolants and pumps to produce very low temperatures without the ice. But Frigidaire was struggling to come up with a suitable coolant gas that ticked all of the right ice boxes. It needed to be inert, volatile, relatively inexpensive, and ideally not too toxic to humans. Back in the 1920s, refrigerators were, frankly, an appalling health and safety risk. They often included dangerous coolant gases which became lethal if the refrigerator ever leaked. Most notably, a single leaking refrigerator in a hospital in Cleveland, Ohio in 1929 ended up killing over 100 people. Good lord, I had no idea refrigerators used to be dangerous. I feel like the future generations of people might look back at us today and with boilers in our home, this poisonous gas comes in, we set it on fire in our homes to make heat. yeah, and if it's not well ventilated, it makes carbon monoxide, which makes you crazy and kills you in your sleep and you don't even know it. Totally odorless. You're like, what the are we doing? We had electricity, right? In 1930, Thomas Midgley had developed the world's first chlorofluorocarbon, or CFC, which appeared to fit the bill. It was soon branded as Freon 12 and rapidly became used in refrigerators worldwide. It also became widely used as a propellant in aerosol spray cans and asthma inhalers, like the deodorants I mentioned, now CFC free or whatever. There was some initial doubt as to Freon 12's non-toxicity to humans, but the mighty Midgley soon put fears to rest during another bizarre presentation, this time for the benefit of the American Chemical Society. During the Society's annual meeting in 1930, Midgley's party trick included inhaling vast quantities of Freon 12 and then blowing out a candle to demonstrate it was both non-toxic and non-flammable. I love that this guy is like, yeah, sample size of 1, so it must be fine, and then gets terribly poisoned. Also, it'd be like, yeah, okay, American Cancer Board, what I'm going to do is I'm going to smoke 100 cigarettes, and I'm going to, I'll have a mild cough, I might smell, but I'm perfectly fine, because that's how science works. However, the direct effect on humans was really never the issue here. It was more down to the devastating effect on the planet. It was later discovered that CFCs released by aerosols and broken fridges cause serious damage to the ozone layer, that handy shield in the Earth's stratosphere which protects mankind from radiation. Yeah, I remember growing up, the hole in the ozone layer was a major thing. I think it's beginning to heal now. But everyone was like, yeah, we're gonna die from this. We didn't, I guess. I'm probably really ignorant. There were probably some terrible conditions and, thousands of millions of people died from skin cancer and people will have a go at me in the comments, it's fine. Unfortunately, there's no natural chemical process that breaks down the CFCs, which can end up having an atmospheric lifetime of 140 years. So the CFCs released from every hairspray ever used since the invention of the aerosol can in the 1940s are still drifting around in the upper atmosphere. Thankfully, the use of Freon 12 began to get widely restricted and ultimately banned in developed countries from 1990s onwards, which implies that people around the world are still using CFCs. Great. But the planet will still be suffering the effects of the mighty Midgley's discovery for decades to come. To be fair to Thomas Midgley, there was no way that he could ever foreseen the catastrophic consequences of Freon 12, as the effects on the ozone layer were only discovered decades after his death. Thomas Midgley dies, and he goes to heaven, and they're like, wow, Thomas, you developed CFCs. The whole world thanks you for making safe fridges. And like decades later, he's up in heaven and they're like, listen, some news has come in. You're gonna have to go to hell. Not that any of that stuff is actually real. Welcome to the dislike. But considering how little humanity he showed during his drive to become rich with leaded gasoline, a discovery which he even managed to poison himself with twice, it's hard to know for sure how he'd have reacted had he known the dark truth behind Freon 12. My guess would be like, it's fine. Or it'd start a really good complaint. Guys, it's not the CFCs. The CFCs are not ruining the environment. Absolutely nothing to do with that. Because as everyone knows, if you get caught in a lie, just keep on lying. Maybe he would have immediately halted the production of Freon 12 in a bid to save the planet, or maybe he would have just hosted another press conference in which he'd emptied the contents of 20 cans of hairspray into his mouth and up his nose. Classic midges. Ironically, Thomas Midgley Jr. died from one of his own inventions in 1944. Again, good. Age 55. Although surprisingly, it had nothing to do with lead poisoning or gasoline blowing up the world. Well, isn't that a shame? Diagnosed with polio in Oh, now I'm beginning to feel bad. Diagnosed with polio in 1940 and confined to a wheelchair for the final few years of his life, Midgley devised a complex pulley system to help lift him out of bed in the mornings. Tragically, he ended up getting entangled in the ropes one morning and accidentally strangled himself to death, falling victim to his final invention. I believe I've made this joke already, or if I haven't on this channel, I have somewhere else. But like, whenever someone's at home alone and gets tangled up in ropes, I feel like whatever the story about their death is, that was a lie concocted by their family. What really happened was auto-erotic asphyxiation. Sorry, Tommy. A sad end for an engineer who was celebrated and showered with awards in his time, but is now in hell. Not really. But is now largely viewed as a one-man environmental disaster. But at least he didn't get a chance to invent anything else. This was another episode of Business Blaze. If you liked it, smash that like button. If you didn't, or if you didn't like my religious comments today, you know what to do. Smash the dislike button, or my political comments. People don't like those either. Smash that dislike button. This has been Business Blaze. Subscribe. Suggestions, leave them below. Upvote the ones you like. Thank you to Danny. You're a hero. I'm rambling. Let's wrap it up. Until next time.